Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Adventure Paradox podcast, where we have with us today Sneha Villalva, who is a speechwriter, storyteller, author, and speaker, and she has over 2 decades of professional writing experience. You would not believe the number of awards this gal has. She was named the MSN's list of top 10 leading speakers to follow in 2025. Sneha's book, Cut to the Essence, which is an acronym, we're going to get into cut in a minute, will be released in May 2026. Sneha is married, this cracks me up, so listen, to her first and last husband and makes her home in LA, California. And she also always has a little bit of extra dark chocolate on hand. Girl after my own heart, Sneha. How are you today? And welcome to the show.
Doing so well, Kat. I wish we could have some dark chocolate right now. It's so great to be here with you.
I know, right? And listeners, if you have some close by, cue the dark chocolate. We are right there with you. Please take a bite. Keep yourself going. What is it about dark chocolate that does it?
Oh my goodness. I mean, one, I'm an antioxidant queen. So just knowing that I'm pouring antioxidants into my body and doing good things with something that tastes so delicious, perfect. It just,
Yes.
yeah, it
Yes.
rocks.
Right there with you. I actually wrote, you're reminding me, I wrote my senior thesis on chocolate and
Did
all
you
of the
really?
benefits of chocolate. And this was kind of, this was 1999. So it was like when people were like, chocolate, really? Isn't it bad for us? And it's like, actually, and
Yeah,
cacao ceremonies and just, I love it.
yeah,
I love it so much. And speaking of love, since we just
yeah.
ended with that, and then I want to get into storytelling and
Uh-huh.
origin story of CUT, which is an acronym and what it stands for. Tell us
Yeah.
about your husband, the love of your life. How did you find each other? And why is he your first and last?
Well, my husband's name is Erwin, and he's from Ecuador. He's Ecuadorian American, and we met through a mutual friend, um, probably about 15 years ago, actually. He saw him at church, and he said, "I know a girl, and I think you should meet her." And we met, we had our first date. For some reason, it didn't take off. This was like 15 years ago. But fast forward 12 years, and he saw me on the worst dating site ever, said hello. We Zoomed the next day, and it was during COVID. Went out the following weekend, went out every weekend since, and got married 3 years ago in June. So he is amazing, just totally worth the wait. I was 43 when I married him, and it was worth every year plus
Oh,
more for him. So he's a
congratulations.
gift.
I love that so much. It's reminding me of like the When Harry Met Sally love story, where they like
Yes.
once, but it wasn't the right time, and then later, and then here
Yeah.
you are. So congrats. Love a good
Thank
love story. Speaking of a good love story, tell us a little bit more about your book because I believe a book is a book baby, it's
you.
it's a love child that you birth.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear more about the title, the acronym, the origin story, and also how it's going, your book writing journey.
Sure. So the book is called Cut to the Essence, and CUT is an acronym and it stands for C, clarify your values, U, uncover the essence, and T, treasure the time. And what it is actually a filter. It's a filter to show us that strategic cuts help us live a larger life, that we cut so we can expand. And it's about the power of subtraction to lead a larger, more expansive life. And how we do that is cutting away excess roles, expectations, noise, the burden of perfectionism, the abundance of more, and realizing that by doing less, we can actually be more and be more of ourselves, be more centered, be our best selves, and bring more to the table because we're more focused on the one thing instead of everything, because we can't do everything and we can't be everything. We
Mhm.
have to choose who we are. We have to clarify what's most important to us, figure out what's most essential, and realize time is short. So we need to embrace the now and live in light of the fact that we don't have a lot of time.
Oh, so good. My granny, who actually is, I mean, she's passed now. She was born in 1900 and passed in 99, but she was in Pacific Palisades. And she always used to say to me, she said, when God made time, he made enough of it.
Yes,
Said we can always end up really bumping up against the TikTok, right?
right.
And I'd love to hear your own story of coming into this beautiful acronym and realizing what is most important to you with the time that you
Mhm.
have. What was your cut?
Yeah, so I was what I call an addition addict. I was a high schooler who had two hands and a dozen plates. I did everything and anything you could possibly imagine. I was leader of multiple clubs, leader in my church, leader in a youth organization. I was in choir, mock trial, academic decathlon. I was basically the teenage equivalent of the EGOT, right? Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. And it was just too much to bear. And I had a moment in my junior year when I just fell into an English teacher's arms weeping. And I couldn't express what was going on, but I realized it was the weight of more. It was just too
Mm.
much, and I was not able to bear it. So I did well, and I did well in college as well, but I had lost that sparkle. I had dimmed under the weight of more. And I realized over time through repeated mistakes and living and learning that we need to be gentle with ourselves, have grace on ourselves, and not try to be all things to all people, or even be all things to the expectations that we have of ourselves, right? To trust that we're made for certain things, we can do certain things, but we're not made to do it all.
Mm.
There's something bigger that can take care of that, and that's not our job. So I think that is the story of burnout. I went from, burning bright to burning out. And
Mm.
that's something I think that's very common. 35% of women surveyed globally rank their mental health as poor or very poor, which is a staggering number, right? And I've been there, and I think it's that burden of bearing too much, of thinking we have to be all things and do all things. And I think that's overloading us, and it's a burden that's too heavy for all of us to bear.
Absolutely. You actually you have an incredible YouTube channel, and that story was so powerful. So thank you for sharing that because I know someone listening, it's exactly what they needed to hear today.
Mhm.
It's like, oh wow, I'm taking on, yes, 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 the yes girl, right? The
Right.
addition addict. So
Yes.
good. Mic drop that. Addition addict. That's so good. But one of your YouTube videos is about lightening the emotional baggage.
Hmm.
And I'd love to hear you maybe go a little deeper into how you started to lay things down or maybe practice the power of your no and not taking
Hmm.
things on anymore,
Hmm.
especially when you're at that place of bottom of like, I don't even know what's going on with me, but I can't take anything else on. Could you
Right.
speak to that? Like, how do you decide what baggage to let go of, what baggage to check, and what to carry
Right.
on? You know?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we hit bottom, we realize what remains, right? And what remains is usually not the things that we're trying to hold up. And so I think how we light that emotional baggage is one, we have to assess if the thing we're doing, does it empower us and does it empower people around us? That's the
Mm,
first question. We have to reflect on that. Like, what is this doing? How is this benefiting me or others? And the second question is, does it bring me peace? And if it doesn't bring me peace and it's not helping me or helping others, that's something we need to let go of because it's just not worth the time and effort. And if we're not serving ourselves, serving others, and living in a place of peace, it's not worth it, right?
mm,
So we
mm,
have to come to that point of letting go of needing to be perfect, right?
mm.
Letting go of the perfectionism. And I believe for me, it's been needing to lean into permission more than perfection and giving myself the space to say it's okay to be who I am in the fullness of who I am and not try to be perfect because that's
Mm.
not my role. My role is to be the best version of myself and to lean into grace and lean into peace and lean into helping others, but also just come from a place of centeredness, knowing that my values are what guide me and that we need to stop living by someone else's script. And I think that's really important. And also find that one essential thing that's buried under all those other things, right? Like, what's the thing that makes me tick? What's the thing that makes me get up in the morning or I dream about at night? And also, what helps me live aligned with meaning, not just motion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so good. And I love what you just said about permission versus perfectionism.
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
my listeners know, I'm on this TEDx journey to a
Yeah.
stage in January, and I was joking with someone who was giving me some feedback about the talk, and she was like, I think it's great. What do you want? I'm like, I want more spice. I want more mic drops. Like, I really,
Yeah.
and she was like, I get where you're coming from, but I really think it's really good as it is. I was like, all right, who let perfectionism in here? Like, this
Right.
guy, I'm carrying it on my back, right? So,
Yeah.
a follow-up question I have for you though, as I was watching one of your YouTube videos, I was wondering about this, and we had a guest on not too long ago who was talking
Mm-hmm.
about co-regulating with horses and
Mm-hmm.
harmony and the energetic quality we get from
Mm-hmm.
working with horses. I don't know how familiar
Mm-hmm.
you are with horses, but she used the same word, peace. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, a horse in homeostasis is at peace. Like that's what they want, is they want to be
Mm-hmm.
at peace in nature, at peace with the herd. They might have a little sort of bucking and dynamic about like who's top dog or horse rather to get to the hay, but then
Yeah.
I just want peace. And so when you brought up that question of like, does it bring me peace? I was thinking about a particular situation
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, honestly, it doesn't bring me more peace, but recognizing that the alternative might lead to more pain or more drama
Mm-hmm.
versus letting it go isn't quite peace. Do you get what I'm getting at? So like I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to hear you kind of wrestle a little more with if you've had any experiences with, and peace can have like all kinds of other connotations too, right?
Yeah.
But like helping someone really decipher what that piece is or that grounded or that centered space, especially when you're in a really sticky one where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, if me doing this might bring me a little peace, it won't bring me more peace, but it's going to cause things for other people, especially
Mm-hmm.
like codependency and those kinds of ideas.
Mm-hmm. So something that will potentially bring peace or just a little bit of peace, but has collateral damage. Is that what you're?
Yeah. And also, like when you were wrestling with, does this bring me peace? Because again, it
Mhm.
might be a thing where it doesn't bring you peace, but some of the other options could either bring more pain, more drama,
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
not peace that way, but
Right.
this doesn't feel like, it's sort of like that
Right.
question of duality where it's
Yeah.
like sometimes it can get a little bit gray.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, sometimes I think we have to look beyond the short term to the long term, right? Like in the immediate, this is actually probably going to be really disruptive and maybe uncomfortable. But if I look at something from the long range, like um, how is this going to bring me to a better place, right? For instance, if you're in a career that is squashing your well-being, your self-esteem, your self-worth, and it's affecting you physically, it's not a very peaceful choice to decide, "Ooh, I think I got to go," right? Because that actually upsets everything in your balance, right? Because it's scary. Your body's not doing well, potentially your mind's not doing well. You're clinging on to something because it is a support and it is something very meaningful and necessary. But in the long view, this stepping into the discomfort could bring peace in the long range because you're making decisions moving towards peace. Does that make sense?
That totally does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking about sort of a simpler one because the other one I'm thinking about is relational and, a bigger thing, but a smaller one. And bodybuilders use the term cut
Mhm.
a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm just thinking as you've been playing
Yeah.
with this book, you've come upon it. But the idea of cutting, which is usually cutting calories so that you
Hmm.
show the
Right.
muscle that you've bulked and been training for. Um,
Right.
and it's very uncomfortable not
Yeah.
to eat when you're hungry. It's like
Totally.
again, the piece on the other side of following through the discipline,
Hmm.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's a
Hmm.
bodybuilder, his book I think is called Stay Hungry or something like that.
Oh,
It's sort
nice.
of this like
Yeah.
play on for bodybuilders to like stay in a slight state of hunger to
Hmm.
achieve that physique, that kind of, which
Yeah.
is ultimately then peace. I'm generalizing bodybuilders.
Yeah. 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 It
Yeah,
it reminds me of this poet slash theologian. He's passed, but he has a book and it's called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And it's that concept of like you're constantly walking towards something in that direction. You haven't arrived yet, but you keep going to that bodybuilder metaphor, right? Like you have to have that discipline day in and day out to arrive at your destination. So I think that's very apt.
absolutely. Another thing that I'm thinking about as you're talking about that and another one of your awesome YouTube videos, which by the way, at the end of this, we'll tell you where to find her and you can go find them in the show notes now if you're in a hurry. But this idea of the power of quiet confidence. And
Mm,
I remember I do a lot of work with horses, a lot of horse adventure coaching and, different things, especially working with animals in nature. But one of my favorite teachers is Linda Kohanov, and she's written like 20 books in equine assisted coaching and the Tao of Equus and all these different things. But she talked about when looking at a herd, you'll have some sort of alpha who is the quiet
mm,
alpha mare. She
mm,
just quietly makes sure everyone gets their turn at the water. And then you
mhm.
have others who are like really aggressive. They're like,
Yeah,
you can't have your time now. Not now. Not till I'm done, you know? No,
yeah,
no, no, no. And they'll like bite
yeah,
and kick
yeah.
and she just holds her own, gets her water first, but without being mean about it, that quiet
Mm,
confidence, and then make sure the rest of the herd has their time without too much snickering to each other.
mhm,
That's what this title made me think of, the
mm.
power of quiet confidence. And I'd love to hear you expand on it and just give us your view of what you've seen and what you're talking about when you refer to this power of quiet confidence.
Mm. Yeah, that is very significant to me, and it is significant to me because it reminds me of my grandfather. He was a very quiet man. My sister would say we hear three words from him: one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one at night. And he really was a man of very few words, but he had this presence about him that just spoke so much more loudly than anything he could say, and he had a confidence on his bearing and his face and his standing. He was a small man, but he stood like a statesman, just had this very quiet confidence. And when he spoke, people would listen because actually he didn't speak very often. So you wanted to pay attention when he did speak. And I think measuring our words, measuring our behavior, all of that exudes this almost nurturing quality, right? And I think that's something that we miss is confidence that nurtures. We're so individualistic that we're thinking about ourselves, right? We're primarily focused on ourselves. And I think that's where it can actually be insecurity masquerading as confidence, right?
Mhm.
So I think that quietness can actually belie a really deep strength. And we just have to move from a quiet place. And I think that means being centered on our values, right? And not being caught up in what are other people thinking of me or how can I make the most noise to get the most attention. And I think we live in a culture of noise where we speak over each other, where we, want to the loudest voices get heard, right? But often it's the quiet voices that have something really meaningful to say. So I think if we quiet ourselves and quiet our hearts and all of those things, we can come from a place that's very centered and speak with meaning and intention and lead with kindness because we're not, you know, wreaking havoc trying to get to the top, right? But we're bringing others with us. So I think that's where that comes from.
So good. I think it was Maya Angelou, but I could be wrong,
Mhm.
who said, no one will remember what you said, they'll only remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Another statistic that came across my field this week is this idea that 78% of our communication is nonverbal.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And one of my favorite songs is by Alison Krauss. I'm totally
Hmm.
gonna butcher this, but here we go, guys. And the line is something like, you say it best when you say nothing at all. Da, 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 right?
Beautiful song. Yeah.
You know the song. And I
Yeah.
just like, I go to that. It's also a song I sang to my grandpa when I
Mhm.
thought he was passing.
Yeah.
And he rallied for another 2 years, right? But we really thought that was the last night. And I just showed up,
Yeah.
with a letter about how much I love him and
Yeah.
played that song for him because he was kind of in a different state.
Yeah.
And I feel like, speech writing,
Hmm.
and I saw this really awesome TEDx talk. I'll drop it in here because it was so good, you guys. But this TEDx talk is all about nothing.
Hmm.
And literally, the guy goes off on like all he's doing is practicing his tone, practicing like, and now I'm going to start talking like this because I'm leading up to the conclusion. Like I have something important to say. about nothing. You know, it's so funny and it's so good. I mean, it's just like, it's so good.
Uh-huh.
But it's also, great speakers. I'm a huge fan of Martin Luther King Jr., like really studying the great orators,
Hmm.
how they speak, not just what they say, but how they speak. But the other side of it is what they said, because some of them, Abe Lincoln, we don't see those speeches anymore. We see what's written. You know? I'd love to hear you talking a little bit more about speech writing itself
Hmm.
as you're using this cut idea and the 20 years of experience you've had with it in terms of like really thinking about the words you're putting out there, not just the way we say them, but the words themselves.
The content, not just the delivery. Yeah. The content is where the substance is at. In terms of choosing the words, again, the cut method is really applicable, right? Like we need to clarify what am I trying to communicate? Like that one big idea. We're not trying to say five things. If we try to say five things, no one will remember anything,
Yeah.
right? So what's that one controlling idea? And I think every word should pay its rent and lead to that one idea. So I think also, uncover the essence comes to that too. Like, what's the most important thing, the driving force behind this, and how do I choose my sentences, my paragraphs, my word choice according to this one controlling idea? Because we only remember one thing. And also, we need to honor our audience's time. So
Mm,
treasuring the time, right? We have to remember that attention spans are short and we live in, I think now it's what, a 3 second average attention span, like much less than a goldfish. So we have to make ourselves memorable and make ourselves meaningful in a really rapid amount of time so that we leave a lasting impression. So those words we choose really count. Every word counts. And so we can't have fluff. We have to have focus. And I think that's very, very important in writing is that focus because we want to say a million things, but really no one's going to remember a million things. And we just want them to remember one thing.
okay, let's talk about that one thing,
Yeah.
especially because you're a storyteller,
Hmm.
right? So when you're thinking about telling a story,
Hmm.
or again, having a limited amount of time, how do you think about that one thing you're trying to drive home? Like, is it sort of the moral of the story? Is it, I don't remember what she said, but it was a funny story? Is it
Hmm.
like, how do
Yeah.
you kind of decide on the tone of your story when you're deciding whether that story is fluff or focus?
Yeah, that's great. Well, it goes back to the Maya Angelou quote, right? I think we have to hone in on the emotion of the story. What is the core, the heart of the story that I can communicate? Because you can get caught up in setting up the setting, you can get caught up in the details, but how do you get to the emotional core of that story so the audience is left with an impression? So I
Mm.
think that again, they're going to remember how we made them feel, right? So I think getting to that, the heart of the story where the most potent emotions are felt, where you see where the story is shown, not just told, right? We paint
Mm.
pictures with our words. I think that's very important that, it's illustrative, not just statements. We need to invite the listener into our story and have them see the story through our eyes. And I think that's very important. The invitation, the description, the emotion, those three
Mm.
things would be really important.
Totally. And I love this, especially I'm thinking about in the context of using your wisdom, using your magic, your original medicine as you're writing your own book right now.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you're looking at the words, and I'm guessing you're filtering it through your own stuff, but
Yeah,
also we can't see ourselves. Like sometimes we're so close to it.
right.
What's your editing process like? Who do you reach out to? How do you decide if, when you share something? And, also May 2026, like how and why is that your deadline? That's a ways out there.
Yeah, it is, but it's going by fast.
I know it.
It's going by really fast. Yeah, I think there's a wood chopping time, right, where you're just in the woodshed chopping wood and trying to get your words right, trying to get the story right, trying to form the words. And you need that alone time and that solitude.
Mhm.
But that solitude is not the end all be all. You have to create in community as well, I believe. So that's where having a great editor is really important. I'm with a great publishing house and I have a fantastic developmental editor. And that extra set of eyes is very important, but you do need to choose that set of eyes very carefully because sometimes the people too close to you won't be able to absorb it in the same way, right? So you have to be very strategic about who you choose. And I think that process, you have to be brutal. You have to be willing to, they say kill your darlings, right?
Mm,
Like those things that turn of phrase that seems really great to you. You need an outside perspective to say, actually, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense, right?
yeah.
So, and I think it's also important to write what you need to write and then set it aside and come back to it later. Because if
Yeah.
we're just, that's the downfall of like cramming at the last minute is you don't have that space to let it breathe and for you to
Mm,
revisit it and able to refine it because
mm.
the editing is just as important as the initial writing. And, first drafts should rarely see the light of day. So it's very important to step away from it, have somebody else look at it and choose someone who understands who you are, but who's also going to be willing to say the hard thing and tell you if it's working or not working and why. And I think stepping away is important, editing is important, and please don't share your first drafts. So
Yeah, that's so good. That's good. And I love the idea of killing your darlings, which is
yeah,
like a favorite conversation to come back to. And I think
yeah.
the thing about storytelling, which I love so much, I'm going back to storytelling, but we're going to connect it to speaking for a moment here,
Mhm.
is historically before we were writing stories down, they were passed down from our
Right,
grandparents, they're
right,
passed down from the elders, in our
right.
whatever. And they weren't written down.
Yeah.
So like you would have to find someone who knew the story, who could tell it again, so that you could
Mhm.
hear it enough times that you knew sort of the key elements to then go and tell somebody else. But there
Yeah,
could be that game of telephone where things are forgotten,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
When you're speaking, have you
Hmm.
ever had a moment where you were up there, you're delivering, you know the story, but maybe you missed something or you had to rearrange it or you were working with someone doing that? And do you have any tips for people when you're literally in it, you're on your feet, you are telling the story?
Yeah.
You know, what are your thoughts about that? Like when you're actually in the living, thriving stage experience, which is quite
Mhm.
different from the slower editing process
Yeah.
where we press publish.
Yeah. I think that's where the power of the pause is really important. Just stopping, not saying anything, pausing and collecting your thoughts. Take a deep breath and pause. That actually happened to me recently when I gave a talk and I got a little flustered at one point, but I think, thank goodness, I just stopped. And the pause makes you look like you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? Because it has gravitas and you stop and you're not stumbling. You just pause and recollect and pick up, and the audience will not know, right? It's because you're the one that owns that story. So you just have to give yourself the grace to pause. I think pausing in life, pausing in speaking, pausing in writing, all those things are very powerful. So I think when we can take a moment to recollect, breathe, and pause, and then restart, we'll be in a good place. So, yeah.
So powerful. The power of a pause. I do think that's a book out there too. I feel like I've seen.
Yeah.
But the power of a pause, mic drop.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a pretty good note to end on, and that people are going to want to come and find you. They're going to want to work with you. Will you tell us about your offers, your favorite places to hang out, websites? This will all be in the show notes. But in case someone's just listening and wants to go find you later, what are the best ways for them to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on snehav.com, which is SNEHAV.com. And my handles are at snehav_official, both on Instagram and YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn as Sneha Villalva. And if you go to snehav.com and send me your email, I have a free reflection guide for you. It's called The Cutting Board. And I would love to send that to you. And also, you can get early access to my book. And that would be amazing to share that with you and help you walk through the cut method. And would love to stay connected and share the book with you as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. And we'll put this all in the show notes so you guys can find it there. But if there are any last takeaways, anything you feel we haven't covered, one
Mhm.
thing we talked about before the mic started rolling is connection to animal or connection to this adventure called life that you've been called to. Like,
Mhm.
what what are you going for right now? Or is there something that we haven't covered you want to be sure our audience hears?
Well, I do like the name of your show, and I love the word paradox. And I think the paradox I would leave you with is that addition can diminish,
Mm.
but subtraction can enlarge. And I think that's true for our lives, that we think adding more will make us bigger, but actually it makes us smaller. And we think subtracting will make us smaller, but it actually makes us larger. And actually, cuts don't diminish us, they shape us. So I think we need to be live in that paradox of realizing that we can be more by doing less and do less and be more. So I think that's the paradox I would leave you with. And in terms of animals, embrace them, love them while you have them because they're precious and they bring so much love and personality and energy to your home. And you never forget them. You never forget them, even after they've passed. So, yeah, enjoy them.
Oh, love that. And I'm rooting for you for your next animal coming into your home, by the way. Thank you for leaving us with that, the adventure paradox, and that, oh my gosh, addition can diminish and subtraction can make us, I can't read my
Can
words.
enlarge. Addition can
Can
diminish. Subtraction can enlarge. Yeah.
I love that paradox and that reflection. Spoken like a true minimalist, by the way. But it's so true and like really refining to get down to that essence is such a powerful gift. So take that home with you, you guys. If you loved this, share it with a friend, subscribe, follow, please leave us a review. And Sneha, thank you so, so much for your time today. It has been a blessing to be with you and learn about your incredible medicine. I can't wait for your book to come out.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.